All right, well, I'll get us started here and then we'll jump right into the fun of it. Good evening, friends, book lovers, and crocheters. My name is Elizabeth Boscher and I'm the events coordinator from Schuler Books. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight virtually for our event with Lauren Espy. I realized I didn't ask you how to say your last name.
You said it correctly.
Espy. In celebration of her new crochet collection, Animal Amigurumi Volume 2. Schuler Books is an independent bookstore with 4 locations in Michigan. You can follow along with all the bookstore happenings on our Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Lauren Espy is the owner and designer behind A Menagerie of Stitches, a shop dedicated to creating crocheted amigurumi. She is also the author of the best-selling books Whimsical Stitches, Crochet Cafe, and Animal Amigurumi Adventures Volume 1. Her love for amigurumi and yarn all started after her grandma gifted her a set of crochet hooks and a book about amigurumi one Christmas. After teaching herself how to crochet back in 2008, Lauren quickly began designing her own patterns and has created a style that is uniquely her own. In 2015, she finally opened her Etsy shop and now sells finished items as well as crochet patterns. Lauren lives in Tennessee with her husband Carl and their 2 pups, Thunder and Storm. Yep. If you need a copy of Animal Amigurumi Volume 1 or 2 and wish to support this independent bookstore, please follow the links in the comment section that I will drop here now. And we encourage you to buy directly through our website, schulerbooks.com, or if you're local to Michigan, you can stop into one of our brick and mortar stores in Grand Rapids, Okemos, Ann Arbor, or West Bloomfield. We're going to get started now. Lauren and I are going to chat for a little bit, and then we're going to open it up for audience questions. So if you have a question throughout our call, feel free to drop that in the Q&A bubble. That should be at the bottom of your screen. I'll try to also catch them from chat, but I might miss them if they're just in the chat. So try to use that Q&A bubble if you can. Now, without further ado, welcome, Lauren.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. I am much more practiced at book events, and this is a book, but it's a little bit of a different kind of book. But I do always like to start my events by having the author kind of describe their work. So can you tell us what this is and what people can maybe expect to find within the pages?
Yes, so amigurumi is the Japanese word for stuffed toys. So basically I make crocheted stuffed toys. Really, that's what it is. So inside of the book, you'll find 15 patterns, so crochet patterns to make your own animals. I include loads of photos. I'm talking like step-by-step photos of everything that you need to know in order to make what you see on the page. So yeah, that's really, that's kind of what it is. It's just a crochet book with patterns.
Fantastic. And you have divided this book into like categories of animals, right?
Yeah.
So do you know them off the top of your head, your categories?
I do. I know Volume 1 and I know Volume 2. So Volume 2 has the safari, Arctic, and it's a pet shop.
Cute. I love that. And I got the privilege of having an early copy and I got to make the elephant, and I can tell you that the instructions are very easy to follow and very fun.
I try to make all my patterns easy, but also kind of challenging. So like there's a variety of skill levels within the book. You have beginner to intermediate and expert. So
that's good to know. That's great to know. So it's a little bit in your bio, but can you tell us about how you got into crochet and maybe specifically how you got into writing your own patterns?
Your own patterns. So like you mentioned, my grandma got me my first book, my first set of hooks and yarn for Christmas one year. And no one in my family has ever crocheted or knitted. So like I grew up, my mom and my grandma were both very crafty. So we were always making things, but it was just, crochet was never one of those things. And so I was at the store, at a bookstore, and I was like, Grandma, can I get this book? And I didn't know the first thing about crocheting and I had to teach myself. So I went to YouTube and taught myself the basics, which is kind of, I mean, this was back in 2008, 2009. So like YouTube was like very like, there weren't a lot of tutorials. So what I had to learn from was not the greatest. I just taught myself how to crochet, and I was making amigurumi. So like I wasn't really doing anything else but making toys. And then I just kind of got into where I kind of knew how to make different shapes. And once you get like a shape down, you kind of know, like you kind of figure it out and how to make your own designs. So there were times when I couldn't find like a specific design. So I'm like, I'm going to have to make this myself. And so I started making my own patterns. And I was thinking about this earlier. My intention was never to release my patterns for other people to make my stuff. I just never, it was kind of like I wanted to keep them to myself. I didn't want anyone to have like my things. But then it just got to the point where I was like, one, I can't keep up with demand of making this item over and over again. So the only other option is really to have a crochet pattern where people can make their own item. And that's kind of where it all just started, like domino effect. I started making my own patterns and then kind of just took off from there. And that's kind of like what I do now. I only do patterns. So
awesome. And you're 5 books in now.
no, it's kind of crazy. Well, it's technically 4 crochet books, and then the 5th one is a baby book.
Oh, right.
It doesn't have patterns, but
I knew that. Forgot, but so, but 4 pattern books in, and then you also sell other patterns on your Etsy shop as well, right?
Well, actually, I'm not on Etsy anymore. I paused my shop. I moved to my own website just because I was like, I need something that's my own. Like I need to be in my own platform where I have like the ability to make my website like what I want it to be. So yeah, I have my own website, and that I've had that for like 6 or 7 years now. So it's really fun having my own thing.
Yeah. Okay, back to this book specifically. How did you pick the animals that you were going to include in this one?
So volume 1 and volume 2 were actually made at the same time. So they got split, and I had to come up with, when at the beginning it was like, okay, we need to do all these different animals, but it kind of has to be broken up into chapters. So the only way I knew how to do that was like, we have to do different sections of like the world kind of thing. And that was my whole idea with the animal book anyways, was we're going on this adventure to these different places, the Arctic, a safari, like we're going to stop at the pet shop, that kind of thing. And so I just kind of brainstormed and like had a huge list of like, what are popular animals and what are some not so popular animals? What are crochet patterns that are already out there and what are some that aren't? Like I definitely know that there's not many walrus patterns, and my walrus pattern, apparently people have been loving him. He's a fan favorite. He's in this book, and it's just kind of a surprise that like people are actually liking him. I'm like, well, he is cute, but I just didn't expect him to be like a fan favorite. So yeah, I just kind of had a list and I had to narrow it down, and it was definitely hard. Let me just tell you, because I'm like, which one do I leave out? But also it kind of has like a full design thing. Like I need to make sure that there's patterns for all skill levels. So like the design has to be easy enough, but also kind of challenging. But also I look for like the different colors, because the Arctic is like, what colors are in the Arctic? There's not a lot. So I didn't want to do all white. So there's like a cream, there's black and white, there's orange on the penguin, and then the walrus is brown. So that has a big play in how I design all the things for the book as well. It has to be color.
Yeah. Okay, here's a curious question for me. Your animals feel very like color realistic. And our hippo is purple. Yeah. Which I know it's like very normal for hippos to be purple, but do you know why because real hippos aren't bright purple.
They're just dark. Yeah, they're dark, right? If you see a picture of an actual realistic hippo, it's a dark color. I think it was more when I designed the purple hippo, it's just like I've seen a purple hippo and like, cartoon like, and I thought it still has to kind of be that cartoony, playful, like kids are going to be playing with these. So like making things with different colors. That's why like I chose the purple, and that purple, let me tell you, was very difficult to find the right shade of purple that I needed for him. I remember going to a couple different stores and I'm like, which is a purple? So
yeah, did you have to do that with a lot of the colors? Like how much time do you spend picking like the exact right color?
not too long, really. I mean, I have, if you can see behind me, I have a lot of yarn. And so like it's all in different color like cubbies. And
Yeah.
so when I'm thinking of, you know, for example, like the chameleon, I was going for green. And so I knew that it needed to be like a bright green. There needed to be like an aqua teal color. So that's kind of like where I just like go in and figure out the color that way. But yeah, for that hippo, I was just like, I don't have any good purples. They're all like grape or dark. I need something kind of lavendery, but not too light. It just needed to be that like perfect.
Yeah. I think it's perfect. I think it's great.
It's a really good color.
Yeah. I just want to know like what person decided that we were gonna draw the hippo as like a really bright purple.
I don't know. But every time
anyway,
I look at it, it's always a purple hippo. So
yeah, you're so right. You're so right. Okay, I'm curious. So you've been designing patterns for a long time and you kind of mentioned that you base them off like here's your basic shapes and you just kind of puzzle piece them together. But like what does it look like to start with, okay, I want an elephant pattern. Where do you start with that?
usually this is funny. Like now that I'm thinking about it, I start with the head. I don't know why, but I do. Like all of them I have like a couple sitting next to me and they've all started with the head. I think that's because you add the eyes and then it kind of comes to life a little bit and you're like, okay, this is how I need to like do the rest of it. Yeah, it's just kind of I draw it out first and then I'm like, okay, these are my basic shapes, but then it always starts with the head.
Do you have to like do a lot of research on like what does this animal actually look like? Or do you ever like get halfway in and you're like, I don't know what a giraffe is like? Like,
I pull up a lot of different, like if I'm for the giraffe, I was like pulling up multiple, I had tabs all over the place. And I kind of just go from there and I draw out what my initial design, like what I want it to look like. And that obviously changes as I go, but for the most part, they kind of stick to like what I'm envisioning. Like I have it in my head and I'm like, okay, it needs to have this, it needs to have these spots, that sort of thing.
yeah, that makes sense. Did any of the ones specifically in this book give you like trouble while you were developing them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a couple. Okay, hang on. Can I look to see really quick?
Yeah, for sure.
There's a couple. Hold on. I know that the walrus definitely gave me a run for my money.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
fan favorite.
He is. Can I show him?
Yeah, go ahead.
He's chunky, but he has like this whole back area was what was definitely, and he has little whiskers. Yeah. So this was him. He was definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
Because I got the body shape and then I'm like, how am I going to do the tail? Like I couldn't figure out how to do the rest of his body. So this is actually a second piece that you sew in. So
yeah. I love him though. That it's like no doubt that or no surprise that he's a fan.
He's a favorite. Yeah. I was surprised. And I also did like a poll in my stories the other day on Instagram and it was just for the pet shop. And everyone loves the chameleon, which that one was one of my favorites to design. And it was a little challenging as well, especially the head shape and then the tail because it's curled.
Yeah. Yeah. And that one you curl with the pipe
cleaners. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
I mean, you can use craft wire too. I just find that pipe cleaners are a little bit easier. They bend a little bit more.
Yeah. So. Yeah. That makes sense. I noticed in your book, maybe separate from some of the other books that I've worked out of before, that you like to add a few other elements like felt or pipe cleaners or things like that I haven't seen.
A lot of other people do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just like adding little embellishments. I think that adding things like felt, like I did it on a lot of the nails on the safari characters, it just kind of adds that little extra. Like I know you can crochet them, but I just think that adding felt or like sewing it on there, like the walrus, he has a felt nose, like he has felt inside of right there.
Oh.
And it just is like that one little detail that kind
Yeah.
of pulls it together. Which is why I like adding those types of detail. And pipe cleaners are so good at like making things stand up as well as like curling. So like
Yeah.
you can have it stabilize or you can have it curl. They're really great. And that's why I like including them, because I don't feel like a lot of people do that in their designs.
Yeah, I like it too. I was happy to see those added in there. I think they add a little bit of extra. All right. I don't know if our audience has any like beginner crocheters, but maybe if we don't have any beginner crocheters here, maybe they have a friend who's a beginner crocheter. What advice would you give to someone who's maybe just starting out and they see these cute animals and they're like, but I don't know how to get going?
I just tell people to just go for it and just learn. Like, I know that there are tons of videos on YouTube, and the main thing that with my books is that I always want just a beginner to pick them up. And my very first book is still doing so well today because people are like, there's such a variety, but they're also super great for beginners. And that's like a huge, like, oh, that's good to know. Like, I want people to be able to do these patterns. So I always tell people, like, just go to YouTube. Like, I have a YouTube channel and I have videos for all kinds of stitches that you would need to learn how to do in order to make my patterns. Like, and really it's just a single crochet and a decrease. Like, those are really all you need to know for making amigurumi. Like, I do include a lot of different stitches in them, but they're easy to learn. So like, I just tell people, don't be afraid. Like, there's no reason to be afraid of like starting to crochet, because it's really not that hard.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people just make it out to be really difficult, especially amigurumi, and it's not. It's really not.
Yeah. From this book then, which pattern would you suggest they start with?
Oh, I was thinking of this earlier too, because I'm like, what are my beginner patterns in here? There's a few in the safari that are really good, but also I would say the polar bear from the Arctic section. Very basic stitches, and it comes out really cute. But it's just a really easy pattern to follow. I mean, all of them are really easy. Yeah, I would just say that one. There are a couple in the pet shop. Like the cockatiel, he's super easy. It's just like a color change.
And he's very colorful, which is fun too.
And I actually had a tester who made hers gray and blue instead of the yellow and gray. So it was super cute. So just because I do it in a certain color, you also don't need to do it in that color. You can totally change it up.
Yeah. Okay, you brought up testers. What does testing look like for this process?
Well, I'm lucky enough that I get to choose my testers. I actually had a friend I was talking to, and she said that her publishers choose her testers. Oh, I really like that I get to choose mine, because like Jason, I actually have been able to like form friendships with my testers, and we have like a little group chat, and we kind of just go back and forth during the testing process if they have a question, or if they just want to show me what they're like, how it's turning out. Really, they're just kind of working on the pattern. Like, I give them the pattern. I'm like, here, tell me if there's anything wrong. Tell me if anything is confusing, or if it's easy to understand, if there's too many photos, if there's not enough on a certain step. And it's just kind of like a going back and forth situation like that for a few weeks. I mean, depending on what our timeline is, but
yeah,
it's really fun having testers, because I get to make friends, and then those testers make friends amongst themselves, and so then it's just like a little community that I'm building, which is really fun.
Yeah, I love that. All right, we are getting a couple audience questions, so I might jump over there. Again, if you are watching with us today and you have a question that you want me to ask Lauren, you can drop it in the Q&A bubble, which should be on the bottom of your screen. The first question, would you ever consider making a French pastry dessert crochet book? I just think it would be so cute to have different cake and pastry patterns.
That would be so much fun. So I actually have Crochet Cafe, and that book is all about food. It has like, it's broken up into different sections. So it's like meals of the day, and there's a whole dessert section. And let me tell you, I would not be opposed to making another food book, because that's like one of my favorite things to crochet is food. I don't know what it is. I just think it's fun. You don't need to add eyeballs to your items, because you can just have it normal, but I just think they're so cute and fun to make.
Yeah.
I would not be opposed to making a book of all desserts. Like I would totally be on that. I would get tons of inspiration. Like I have a sweet tooth. I am like, yes, I will definitely do that.
Sounds like a yes. Sounds like the next one. How do you get your stuffy to not show the stuffing? I have a really hard time with that.
I always, you want to definitely don't overstuff. I know that's like hard. Like, how do I know if I've stuffed enough? A little bit at a time. Like that's really the best tip. I also use a chopstick. They call it a stuffing stick in my fiberfill bag, but I just call it's a chopstick. And that's super nice because you can get into those little areas that need the extra fluff in there. But also if you're still having an issue with your stitches showing your stuffing, I would go down a hook size just to make your stitches tighter. Because that I always use like a G hook it's like a 4mm, and I've actually gone down like 2 hook sizes because that's just my preference. I would rather have like a tight stitch rather than kind of loosey where it can show my stuffing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. Okay, I have 2 questions about testers. The first is, how did you find your first testers? And the second being, is there an opportunity to apply to be a tester?
So my testing, I always put out, I'm really active on Instagram. And so anytime I need testers, I will put out a call on my Instagram, and it's usually in my stories, and I do leave it up for X amount of days. For the Animal Amigurumi ones, I put out a call and I had a lot of people apply for it, and then I just kind of have to sift through. So it is there. It's just a matter of like if you actually are able to see it on Instagram, like if they show it to you. But it is there. Right now, I have like my little group of testers that I'm like, hey, can you test this? Just because they're like, yeah, I'll do it really quick for you kind of thing. But if I'm ever doing like another book, like it will definitely be a tester call where I'm like, hey, I'm working on this big project. I need a lot of testers, because I had 16 testers. I mean, that's a pretty big group of people. So
yeah. And did your testers, this is a question for me, did your testers test multiple patterns, or were they all like assigned certain things?
They were assigned a chapter.
Okay.
So they got, each chapter has 5 animals. So they got to test 5 different ones. And they got the patterns for like, I don't quote me. I think it was like maybe 3 weeks, maybe 4. It just depended on what our timeline was. We had a lot of wiggle room. So they had an extra amount of time to do it, but also, it went right out of my head what I was going to say. Sorry.
It's okay. That's
okay. Definitely that's how my testing works. They get it for a time period and then.
Yeah, that's good to know. Okay, from Katie, I am pretty sure I own all 4 of your crochet books, all 3 sets of minis, and your plant book. So I have a million options. What is your favorite pattern you've designed?
That is the hardest question.
That is a very hard question.
It is. I have made so many different things. The minis that she's talking about, I've actually, a few years ago, it's like 100-day project. So I did one little mini. It was like, it had to fit in my hand. So they're small. A little amigurumi every single day for 100 days. And I did that 3 times, 3 different years I did it. So there's 300 projects. Like I could never pick from those. I don't know. I have so many. That's why do I have to answer that? That's like the most difficult. Okay.
How about like from specific books?
From a specific book. Okay. Whimsical Stitches. I would say the succulent planter, and it has like a little cactus, some little string of pearls, because it was my very first pattern I designed for the book, and it was my very first book. So it has a special place. Crochet Cafe, I'm going to say the popcorn. That's always been my favorite. Okay, hang on. Volume 1 of Animal Amigurumi, the fox. The fox lives up here behind me. So this fox and the squirrel, those 2 are my favorite. And then for volume 2, I'm going to say the chameleon. But there's too many. And also in my plants, I love plants, and crocheted ones are even better. So I would have to say my snake plant. It lives up on my bookshelf as well because I love it so much.
I think that might be the collection I need to check out next, are the plants, because
The plants.
I'm
They're
very bad at like keeping actual house plants alive. So I think I'll have better success with the crocheted kind.
yeah, definitely.
Okay, our next audience question: are your instructions written out or are they in diagram form?
Written. I don't know how to do a diagram. I kind of know how to read them a little bit, but they're all written out.
Yeah, we can kind of show a page. I know it will be backwards, so you can't read it, but you can see the writing. And there's lots of pictures in these books, which I love.
I love it too. I love including all these photos, but then it comes down like, how do I really need this photo? Like, we need it, but
we were chatting before we hopped on the official call that I loved making this elephant, but my assembly got a little wonky. Which I love all the photos because I can be like, okay, that is definitely not how she did it.
But they're also really helpful because it shows you where to actually place things.
Yeah.
Like I know some patterns don't say that, like don't have photos for it. And I'm just like, okay, where does this go?
Or like you're trying to count, but it just like gets confusing.
And on a lot of like, especially like the elephant, you can actually see where the legs are supposed to go, how they're supposed to look. So you kind of have an idea of it with the directions as well that are written there.
Yeah. Yes. Makes it very easy to follow. Very good. All right. So this attendee says, I'm a beginner and I was wondering how you would recommend getting more consistent stitches. Some of my stitches are too loose and others are too tight. Is it a matter of practice?
Yes, it definitely changes. I mean, when I first started, my things were wonky. As a beginner's projects are, your stitches are kind of like, you're getting used to how you are holding the hook and your yarn. So like your tension is going to be different. Everyone holds it differently. So, you know, your stitches are all going to be different. But yeah, it's just a matter of practice really, because I know that my tension has changed over the years. And I know when I'm stressed out and I'm working on a project, my stitches are tighter. And then when I'm like, oh, I'm having a great day, everything's fine, and I'm working, my stitches are a little bit looser. So I've gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, you can't crochet when you're stressed, and you have to just kind of have like a normal day where you're crocheting, and that kind of helps it where your stitches are even. And I always make sure that I finish part of a pattern before I set it down for the day, because I know that if I come back to it, I might change my tension and it will turn out wonky. So
yeah, that's fair.
Practice makes perfect, but it does. Practice is what is going to help you.
Yeah. I don't know if this was your experience as well, but I know when I started crocheting, I liked the animals because they were in the round. And I tried to do some other things that were like you chained and then you single stitched across, and I could never get the first row to look the way it was supposed to. But a round feels more like secure to me, which is helpful for beginners.
It definitely is. I used to like, you know, that there's different methods to starting a project. If no one's familiar with it, there's like a few different ways that you can start your piece. Working in the round is just so much easier. And it's kind of like, I say I'm really bad at math, but it's funny because you're doing math all the time. You're counting stitches, you're doing things like it. Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Okay, Erica, do you have any tips for avoiding strain on your hands when crocheting often?
Take breaks. Yeah, definitely breaks are helpful. And do some hand stretches. Like that's kind of what I start to do after a while. I never really experienced hand pain, but then like I kind of started to feel some, and I'm like, that's not good. We need my hands to be in good shape. But just stretching, taking breaks. I know that there's a lot of resources that I've seen on Instagram that are like specifically for crocheters and knitters. So like if you're working with your hands all the time, like just taking breaks and stretching is really good.
For you, this is your full-time job, correct?
Yep.
So how much time in your week do you spend crocheting?
It varies. It really does, because I'm always either doing computer work or I'm crocheting. So if I have like a big launch coming up with patterns, then I'm like crocheting pretty much every day for, I want to say maybe like, I would say like 5 hours. It just depends. I get distracted easily, and then I'm either on Instagram trying to upload things or responding to emails. So it's just kind of like a matter of like, oh, what do I need to get done? And then that's how much I'm crocheting.
Yeah.
If I wait till the last minute, then it's more time, but I try to space it out because I love crocheting, but it's like I have other things that I need to do. So I'm like, I can't always be crocheting.
That's fair. What does your environment look like while you crochet though? Do you listen to something? Do you watch TV? What is your environment?
Usually I'm either listening to music or I'm listening to audiobooks. And that's where I'm at. Like right now, I'm just listening to audiobooks all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I
And
guess
then sometimes I'm like, I don't even need to listen to anything, really. I'm just
yeah.
I'll pause it and then I'll forget to put it back on. And I'm just like still sitting here crocheting, like doing my own thing.
Yeah, that's the other
That's
option.
my husband. So
Not
it's
having
like
something. Yeah. Okay. From another attendee, do you do other crafts or is crochet the only one?
I only do crochet, but that's like crochet is like my job. And so my hobbies now have become my other like my other hobby, the things I used to do. I like to do knitting. I'm not that great at it. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. I am pretty good, but it's just like it takes me a lot longer to make things. So knitting is like back burner if I need a project to work on. I also really love to cross stitch. So that is what I normally do in my spare time,
Fantastic.
which is really fun.
Yeah. Um, Jason, I see your question. I'm going to save it till the end. If anyone else has other questions they want to drop in the Q&A bubble, feel free to do that. So often like crocheting and other crafts can be pretty like solo activities. How do you like build in community to that? Like, do you go meet up with people and craft together, or maybe you don't?
Well, okay, so it's very isolating. And I was actually talking about this with a group of people I just met a few weeks ago. And we have kind of like a bi-weekly stitch group, which is really fun. It gets me out of the house and it gets me talking to other people that besides my husband about yarn, because I'm sure he hates talking about yarn all the time. But it's really, I was talking about it and they're like, oh, that's very isolating. You don't go to any like coffee shops. And I'm like, no, because I like being in my own bubble. I like being comfortable. And so I don't really ever get dressed normally. Like I like to lounge in like my comfy clothes. So I don't really go anywhere, but I have started to go out and meet new people, which is really fun because I can actually crochet with them and it not be like this weird, like, why are you crocheting in public kind of thing. But there is a couple different groups that I go to, which is really fun. And I just started doing that. So it's making me get out of my bubble.
Yeah. And virtual communities are obviously a big thing, like with your testers. Do you want to talk about your Saturday event?
Oh, yeah. So to celebrate volume 2 coming out, I'm having just a little virtual event on Zoom, and it's free to attend, but it's just kind of like a Q&A, but also a little crochet along. So we're actually making the chameleon together on Saturday. And it's just a couple of hours in the afternoon that we're just going to hang out and crochet together, which is really fun. We did it last year and we sat and crocheted for 4 hours and it was great.
That's amazing. And people can find that link on your Instagram?
Yep. Instagram is on there. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Okay, we've got a few more questions. How long do you plan to make your holiday bunnies?
Okay, so my holiday bunnies, I've been doing them since October of last year and I released 4 bunnies and they're kind of dressed up for the season. It started with Halloween, and then it just kind of domino effect, and I've made a collection every month. I have 2 more. I have an August month and September, and then I'm done with the bunnies. And it's kind of sad because I've been doing them all year. But I'm excited to be done with them, but I'm like, oh, the bunnies. They've been really fun to make.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, to jump back to your Saturday event real fast, do we need to buy the book to do the crochet along?
Yes, because the pattern is only available in the book, and I'm not with my publisher, I'm not allowed to sell the patterns individually. So it's an exclusive to the book.
Gotcha. Good question. I'm sure you could join and like get a sneak peek of the pattern, but to be able to make it, you're gonna need the full book.
Yeah, but you actually don't even need to, if you don't want to participate in the crochet along, you can still come and hang out. Like you don't even need you don't need to crochet. You can just come and hang out with us. And the other one is that you don't have to work on that specific project. I know that there were some people that voted for a different animal they wanted to make. I'm just like, you can come crochet whatever you want. I'm going to be making the chameleon. You can make whatever you want to make.
Amazing. I'm sure it'll be a blast.
It'll be really fun. Come, you don't have to crochet.
Yeah. Okay. When did you decide to crochet full time? And what was the process like of starting your Etsy business and then moving over to your own website?
So I took my business full time in 2016. It was just one of those things where I knew I couldn't keep up with the demand of making all of these things. I was making a chemistry set and people were buying them like hotcakes, and I could not keep up with it. So I was like, okay, I have to do this full time. And I was really fortunate that my husband and I were in a place where I could take it full time. And that's just kind of how I started my Etsy in 2015, and then I went full time in 2016. I was on Etsy for a few years, and then just with their fees and everything, I just thought it would be a lot easier for me to have my own website, and transitioning was super easy. It does have, you have a lot of work to do because you're not under Etsy anymore. And so like you actually have to push people to your website. And that was kind of difficult, but because I had a presence on Instagram, it was easy to just be like, hey, I'm not on Etsy, I'm over here now. Like come and hang out and buy my patterns over here instead.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of a learning curve, but definitely something that I'm really glad that I ended up doing when I did, because it's just, I like having my own website and the freedom to do what I want to do over there.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Okay. Jane asks, or it's more of a suggestion, but I will read it. I have been making many amigurumi animals using thinner yarn and smaller hooks. I give them to my grandchildren to use as ornaments on their Christmas trees. They always look forward to the animal that I made just for them.
That's so fun. Yeah, so I actually use worsted weight acrylic, which is like a medium weight yarn. I will do that for my main projects, but if it's something special, I actually use cotton yarn, and I use a very small hook.
Yeah.
Definitely something that I do it only on those special occasions. And they turn out smaller and I love it, but it's definitely something to get used to because it is such a smaller hook and yarn that I'm like not used to it all the time. Like I have to get back into like, oh, I'm doing something small. So it's the smaller stuff is really fun and it's special. Those ones are the ones that I won't get rid of.
Yeah, for sure. That plays right into what type of yarn do you use? So you said acrylic, worsted weight for most things.
Yeah.
Cotton for the smaller ones. Do you have like a brand that you like?
My main brands, I have a few that I use. Michael's has their Loops and Thread Impeccable, and that is one of my go-to yarns. It's a really good acrylic and it comes in a ton of different colors. I also use Hobby Lobby, I love this yarn, but not all that often, but they have a really good selection of colors in that line of yarn. Vanna's Choice by Lion Brand is another good one. They kind of started dwindling their colors, so like they don't have as many good ones anymore. So that one's kind of like pick and choose if you can find it for your project. But yeah, just an acrylic. I feel like it's more versatile and it produces a good size animal. Like I know that plush yarn is like super popular and everything, and I do make some things out of it, but that's not like my main thing. I just think that the acrylic is good. But my patterns, they do work with plush yarn. So if you have a fear that like, oh, that's not going to work, it actually does. And it's only going to be a little bit bigger. I'm working on the cockatiel from the book and I'm making it in plush yarn, and it's not that much bigger. I mean, it is a little bit bigger, but it's working totally fine. So they do coincide, like you can change out the yarn with my patterns.
That's great to know. Yeah. I think that's another thing that like when you're first starting out, maybe you don't know how much you can kind of adjust from
Yeah.
how it's written, but that's good to
Yeah,
know.
I've noticed that my patterns work. They work really well kind of with any type of yarn. So even if I suggest using the worsted weight, you can definitely change it. I've seen a few people making some of these animals in chunky yarn and it works totally fine and they look so cute. Like they're cute, they're kind of big and chunky, but it's really adorable.
Have you seen a walrus in the chunky yarn yet?
Yes. It was the first one I was like, oh, thank you, because he's so cute. I kind of want to make him now in a chunky yarn and just have him like sitting next to me.
Yeah. Is there a book topic or pattern set that you haven't made yet, but you really want to?
A book topic, I would say I want to do a book all about plants. Like I just want a full book, all the plants that you can give me. But I think I've kind of covered a lot of things because I've done animals, I've done food, I've done plants, but it's just kind of like I don't really know what else is next. I don't have that figured out yet.
That's fair. How long does it take you to complete one animal?
I would say if I'm working on it consecutively, like a week. It just depends if I'm having trouble. I was just working on a pattern that I'm not really going to show yet. It's going to come out like next week or so. I had such a hard time with it. It took me like 2 weeks. And I just finished assembling it today. And I was just kind of like, this took me way longer than it needed to. Like it just depends. It depends on how much I'm struggling. And
Yeah.
I do struggle. Even though I do this full time and I'm always making things, I do struggle. I frog my projects. I throw things away that I just don't want to deal with.
That's fair. Speaking of maybe a struggle, speaking of the chemistry set, your stuff always looks so nice and flat. The insides of beakers, the dirt on plants, etc. How? Mine are always rounded or bubbled.
Cardboard is your friend. Like we were talking about with pipe cleaners and felt and everything in my pots, because I wouldn't give it to it. If you're going to wash it, give it to a child. Definitely don't include the cardboard. But for plants, I don't really see people giving those to a kid to play with. So I put cardboard in the very bottom of it and then I stuff it. And so the cardboard gives you a flat bottom. Same with the beakers. The beakers actually don't have cardboard. I made a bean bag for them so that they would actually be kind of heavy on the bottom. And I just use like little plastic pellets. Like you can get them near the fiberfill in a craft store. So I just did that in the bottom of them, made them sturdy. So yeah, cardboard is really helpful. And I like to use like thick. If it's thin cardboard, double up and just tape it together. But yeah, cardboard it's such an easy thing to get that you can use in your projects.
Cut it into whatever shape you need it to be.
Exactly.
Have you ever made an axolotl? How do you feel about an aquatic life book?
I have made one. He is in my mini set and he's tiny. He's a little pink guy. He's super cute. I think I would love to do aquatic things. I did an under the sea. So like in Whimsical Stitches, there's a whole like ocean kind of like under the sea section. There's a jellyfish in there and that was super fun to make. I would love to just kind of explore that like genre and see like what other things I can come up with, because I mean I would just guess like the fish are going to be like super colorful and that would be like right up my alley.
Yeah, absolutely. Michelle asks, for a new seller, would you say Etsy may be a good place to start out, even with all the fees? I'm a market seller and it seems harder and harder to take the hobby full time right now.
Definitely, if you're starting out, Etsy is a great place. I know that they have all their fees and everything, but it is there's a search engine there. Like you are able to get seen on there a lot better than if you have to drive people to your website. So definitely I would take advantage of that. I know that there seems like there's a lot of things on Etsy, but it's possible to be seen. Like people can find your stuff if they're searching the right terms and all kinds of things. Like you can definitely get seen on Etsy. I would start there. Even though I'm not on there anymore, it's definitely like a newbie. I would totally recommend going there.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and it sounds like you worked hard to like build a community on Instagram that was following along so that when you did transition, they could kind of follow with you.
And
So
I do, my Etsy shop is still there. So it's not like it's completely gone. It's just on holiday. So like in my like description, I say like, hey, go over here and check me out. I'm not here anymore. And that kind of, I've gone on Etsy a few times and I see that I'm still getting like a couple people looking at my thing, but hopefully they're just going over to my website instead. So
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so maybe for this individual, if they're at markets, they can also promote like some kind of community space that people will continue to follow along with their work. Cool. I know we've talked about this a little bit already, but another question of what made you decide to crochet amigurumi animals. If you wanna...
So so this is my whole thing, like on Whimsical Stitches, that was kind of, it's a variety. So you have plants, animals, and you have food. Like there's 2 chapters of food because there's like a bakery and a market. So you have a lot of food, and then there's animals. There's like 2 chapters of animals. And I just had never really kind of gone further than that. And then I did my food book and I was like, I really want to do a book where I'm seeing like visiting all these animals that I would normally not crochet. Like I wouldn't normally crochet a walrus, right? Like that's just not something like, oh, I'm gonna do this. That's what I'm gonna make today. So I thought I need to make animals. Like that's something that I've never done. And I want that challenge. I want to be able to challenge myself as a designer and like just see if I can actually accomplish like making something that's not normal, like that I wouldn't normally make.
Yeah. Oh, my question just disappeared. That's okay.
It happens to all of us.
It's gonna bug me a little bit, but that's okay. All right. Well, can you tell us what you're working on next? Like where do you go next from here? Jason asks after a much deserved break. Next.
Thank you for your patience, Jason. Right now I have my 2 other sets of holiday bunnies that I'm going to start working on. I haven't done that yet, even though it is August. I'm working on those right now, and then I'm just kind of going with the flow. Writing a book it takes a lot of time, and I'm always writing in the middle of fall and winter, and those are my favorite seasons, and I'm never able to like actually devote time to making things like that. So I'm just kind of going with the flow, really. There's no book in my horizon right now. Obviously, it just came out. I don't have anything lined up. But yeah, just more patterns, really. More patterns. I want to start like a Patreon. I want to build my community and like have more people learn to crochet because I just think it's so much fun.
Yeah. Maybe do more stitch alongs.
Yes, I would love to do that.
Yeah.
So much fun.
That would be awesome. Can you tell people where they can follow along with you online? And I will drop some of those links in the...
I am basically on all social media. I'm a menagerie of stitches, and you have to have the A. It's a menagerie of stitches. If you type in menagerie, you're not going to find me, but I'm a menagerie of stitches. Pretty much everywhere. Yeah. On Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, all the things.
Awesome. I think we are out of questions, but it was a delight to talk to you today, Lauren.
So much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm going to drop the shop links as well here for if you want to purchase a copy of the book and if you would like to support Schuler Books. We have plenty of copies of Volume 1 and Volume 2. We can also order in the other books that Lauren has written, so I will drop all of those links here in the chat. And both Schuler Books and Lauren would appreciate it if you did purchase some of her crochet books. It helps all of us.
It does. It really does help all of us.
Yeah. So thank you again, Lauren. This was a delight. I can't wait to crochet my next little critter.
Yes, you'll have to show me.
Yes.
I'm so excited for you.
All right, everyone. We're gonna log off. Have a great night.
Awesome. Bye.